Hello, viewers. This is Representative Carl Seidel and the People's View. Tonight, we have Senator Peter Bragdon from Milford, who is also the Senate President. And we're going to talk about some of the issues that come up in the Senate this time. So, Senator Bragdon, what do you think about the last year and your accomplishments?
Thank you for having me. I think we accomplished a lot last year. Most importantly, we accomplished what the people who elected us were promised that we would do. We tackled, first order of business, the state budget, which was looking to be at least $500 million to somewhere close to $1 billion in the red. Because really of overwhelming spending above means, optimistic and unrealistic revenue projections, and very bad financial practices over the prior 4 years. So when we came in, the first thing we said we were going to do was we're going to fix the budget problem, and we weren't going to raise taxes in order to do it. The House and the Senate working together put together a budget that did exactly that. It did require some painful and difficult decisions, but when people elect you, that's what they expect you to do, is make the difficult decisions. And if you look at the final budget that we passed, if you look back to the last budget put together by Republicans, which was put together in around 2004, 2005, and you adjusted that for inflation for each of the next 4 to 5 years, you end up with where we ended up with our budget. So it's not like we made a lot of cuts over what had been happening. What had been happening was the folks who were in charge in that intervening 4 years were just spending wildly and putting it on the credit card, basically. And so we had to come in and fix a lot of problems and put the ship's finances, the state's finances back on a solid footing. So,
and not use any of the gimmicks that were...
Right, no, gimmicks, no. We didn't borrow money, we didn't raise taxes, we didn't use rosy revenue estimates. And I think that what's telling is that the revenue estimates we used, we are on track for almost all the taxes. There's one with respect to hospitals that there's some disputes over that looks like it's going to be decided in the state's favors, in which case that money will be coming in on target as well. So I think our revenue numbers, and this again was the House and the Senate working together, our revenue numbers were realistic and so far 6 months into a 2-year budget accurate.
Looks
so
good.
That was the first thing, that the most major accomplishment. Second to that, but not too far behind it, the state's pension system was grossly underfunded. I would say it was somewhere in the mid 60% range in terms of its funding levels. And to put it simply, the system would have gone belly up had we not made the changes we had to make. And again, it was difficult decisions. It affected many people, public employees of this state, both school, town, state employees. But we had to explain to them, and I went to numerous meetings in my district, explaining to them that, look, if we don't fix this, it won't be there for you when you retire. So again, difficult decisions had to be made, but we made those decisions, and we kept our word. When we elected, we said that's what we're going to do. We also said we're going to focus on the economy and the jobs, and we looked for ways to help out small businesses in New Hampshire. Our goal is to have businesses be able to succeed in New Hampshire, because when businesses succeed, they grow, and when they grow, they hire people. When we came in, when the election was held back in November 2010, there were somewhere in the neighborhood of 40,000 people in New Hampshire out of work. That has dropped down now. It's in the low 30s, and we see the gradual improvement in the state's economy. Part of that, I'm sure, is because we took a proactive approach to business. Of our 24 senators, 12 of them are freshmen. 8 of them never had served in the legislature before, including the 2 lovely senators from Nashua, Senator Lambert and Senator Luther. And all 8 of the brand new ones had business experience. They knew what it was like to balance a budget. They knew what it was like to make hard decisions.
Definitely.
And they know what it's like to make efficient use of their time. And so we tried to be very efficient in what we did, but do the right things to help businesses in the state. So I think we were able to accomplish all of those things, which are exactly what we promised people that we were going to do.
I think that we're attracting new companies up here.
Absolutely.
I like the one that's coming up from Massachusetts and seems to think that they'll have 500 new jobs.
Yep, it's it's small companies and big companies that we need to be attracting to New Hampshire and just giving them an environment where they can succeed.
I think that's we're doing it. We're still continuing to do that this year. What do you think 2012 will do for you?
Yep, I think it's the same priorities. I think we still need to keep an eye on the state budget, make sure the revenues are coming in okay, make sure the spending's going according to plan, and then also keep an eye on the economy and the business environment. Some of the things we'll be doing in this second year are not quite as sexy as some of the topics in the first year, but rewriting the corporate tax laws, the corporate laws in the state, the LLC laws. So when the small person wants to go start their own small business, they don't need to go hire a lawyer and accountant to set it all up. The LLCs in New Hampshire should be simpler to set up. So a person, and I knew this when I started my business, I had a small software business that I started. It was just me and hiring people and getting some computers and stuff. And I'd much rather spend that money on the equipment I need for my business than paying lawyers and accountants to help start the business. So again, if we make it easy for people to start businesses, those businesses can grow, they can hire people.
And one of the areas, too, is the rules and regulations that we're looking into.
Rules and regulations are very difficult and sometimes contradictory or sometimes duplicative. Certainly some regulations are necessary, but when you have so many regulations that you actually impede companies from growing, you really need to take a look at what are we trying to solve. And one example we had was the ski areas up north. When they would withdraw water for their snowmaking from the rivers, our Department of Environmental Services required them to keep track of how much water they took out of the river. There may be a public purpose for that because you want to make sure there's water left in the river for other people, but they would take the water out of the river and put it into holding ponds, and then at night they would take it out of the holding ponds and spray it on the slopes. Well, the department required them not only to meter it and have all this expensive equipment when they took it out of the rivers, but then when they took it out of the holding ponds, they had to have this same duplicate metering system in the same forms and send it down to Concord, which I'm sure ended up in a closet somewhere. So the ski areas just asked us to take out that second step. We already have covered the public interest by saying, okay, what's happening to the river? It doesn't really matter what's happening to the holding pond because the only reason it's there is to hold the water to be sprayed. So it's little things like that that add up to make it difficult to do business in New Hampshire sometimes.
It's a wonder they didn't ask for how much water melted. The melted snow.
If they could find a way to measure it, they might have done that too. So.
Well, I know there are some silly rules and regulations. I'm having a hearing on a subcommittee on the rules and regulations. And you know that there are several different definitions of an independent contractor that the state's working under?
Yes, the independent contractor issue has been around for a long time too, and it's a difficult issue. A lot of it's driven by tax things, and obviously when your focus is on taxing people, then you tend to make things more complicated than they need to be.
That's true, but I can't imagine an operation of the government has different definitions for different agencies.
Yep. It is very strange.
But anyway, so you're going to be looking at a lot of the same things that you've already been looking at, but more in detail, more oriented to making this a better place to live in, to have the funding. And where do you see the problems, though? Or do you have a particular issue that you see is going to be controversial?
Well, it's certainly on the Senate side. Anything involving the budget is still controversial. I know there are a number of issues that the House is currently dealing with that some would deem controversial, and we know at some point in the Senate we'll probably get those bills as well, and so we'll deal with those. Certainly, an issue that's always controversial, no matter what you do, is every 10 years new districts have to be drawn for both the House and the Senate, and that's a very it's a political process. It's usually a partisan process. One side likes it, the other side doesn't like it. That's typically how it works, and so. Those will be difficult discussions that will go on, and there'll be a lot of fighting. And if the past holds true, the plans end up in court with somebody arguing at least that they're not constitutional. And so it's a process we go through every 10 years. And when I was in the House briefly 10 years ago, I was on the Election Law Committee, and we dealt with redistricting then. So I got to see it 10 years ago, kind of from a distance. This time it's a little more up close.
Had a few problems then too.
Yes, that particular one did pass the House and Senate. The Governor Shaheen vetoed it. The House and Senate were not able to override those vetoes, so there was no plan at all. And then it went to the court, and the court said, well, if you don't put one together, we're going to draw one. And the legislature couldn't get one together, and so the court decided they're going to draw their own plan. And I really don't think that's an exercise they enjoy doing, and I don't think it's something they look forward to doing again. So.
And I don't think people enjoyed the result.
That could be as well.
Well, let's hope that this one, we're going through the House has approved their plan. Now we'll see how that goes through the system.
Yep, and the Senate committee approved the plan yesterday, and so that'll be on the floor of the Senate next week. I don't think you guys are meeting next week, so you've passed yours, we've passed ours, so when we meet again, we'll be dealing with each other's redistricting plans.
Good. Well, some of the other things that we passed are the constitutional amendment proposal, and I know that I think the Senate is agreeing in general about it, but the wording has to be played with.
I assume you're talking about education funding?
Yes.
Yes. Yep, I think the House and the Senate and even the governor have proposed different constitutional amendments for education funding. I think we all agree that we need to have one, and the matter is to get the wording, and really it has to be presented to the voters. So the trick is to get something that 66% of the voters will approve. And that really needs to have then agreement amongst Republicans and Democrats and the governor to be able to get that high threshold. And so we continue to work to try and find some agreement and some combination of words that collects enough votes from various coalitions to get through.
And doesn't confuse the people once it gets out
That's true, because if you have something very confusing on the ballot, people will be tempted to vote no. So when in doubt, vote no is what is not a bad mantra.
That's right. And we also have the one on the income tax.
Yes, you folks just passed, I assume it was this week, the one requiring, actually you passed one last year that requires a 3/5 majority to increase any tax or fee. We held on to that one. We'll be dealing with that in a week or two. And this other one's coming over. We might deal with them together. That requires, that basically says no income tax, direct or indirect. And so we haven't discussed that at all in the Senate. We knew it was coming over and figured we'll see what it looks like when it comes over. There was some debate about what words were being used. So we'll take a look at it when it comes over. We'll have our debates as well and see if the wording is agreeable to us. If not, we'll suggest some changes and we go through the process that we go through.
That's going to be the main thing, is to get it so that all the sides can accept it.
Yes, yep. And there's a number of issues there. That's even some would argue that it's good to have that as an issue on people's minds when they go to vote every 2 years, because in New Hampshire that's certainly a big issue. If a candidate runs saying they want an income tax, they tend not to do so well. Some have argued if you put that language in the Constitution, it's no longer an issue on Election Day, and so yeah, so there'll be some interesting debates in the Senate, I'm sure, about what the best approach is for that.
What do you think about this? We've seen a number of proposals for different constitutional amendments. I won't get into all of them, but the number of them is something that I worry about.
I don't know how many you folks have had. You've only sent us 3, which is a manageable number. I'm not sure. I guess, we sent you one on I think a line item veto that I think you guys toasted. So yeah, we only had 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You only sent us 2 or 3, but I know there were a lot more that never made it on our doorstep.
Well, they're still going to be discussed coming up with modifications. There's a lot of work that's been done on that.
I'm sure the House will do a splendid job working on these.
But is it your opinion that maybe 2 or 3 should be the limit?
Well, I think if my initial thought was if you have 10 amendments on the ballot, then people might be not focused on the most important one. Although we did do a little study looking back in history, and there were some years where there were 6 or 7 on the ballot, and even the 6th and the 7th one did better than the 1st and the 2nd one. So really? it doesn't seem to be the case that if there's a whole bunch, people aren't focused on the most important one.
Still depends on the issue then.
Yeah, I think it depends on the issue and what the voters are thinking at the time.
Because I know that's been a discussion on our side that we can't have too many of them.
That's my, my initial assumption was that. I think I still believe that, but the data at least shows that there are times when, if there's a lot, people seem to be.
And if the issues are important enough.
Right, and if they're in, the voters maybe were in a generous mood that year, and that was following a constitutional convention as well, and so it might be different if it's proposed by the legislature. So.
We had a lot of new people this year on the House side, and you had too, but I was wondering if they're as anxious to get their ideas in on some kind of legislation on your side. I
think so. I think especially in the second year, and I know one of your guests later on will be Senator Lambert, and he can comment on this. But I think when you're, if I remember my first year, both as a House member and as a senator, just kind of laid low and watched what was happening. But then as people get to know you and you get to know people, they start coming to you with their ideas for what they'd like for legislation, and you start putting stuff in, and so I suspect after the first year, people kind of want to get a little more involved.
Yeah. Well, is there, you talked a little bit about redistricting. You had no problems with that, but do you think that there'll be any problems with the governor on how he...
I don't know what the governor's going to do with those. I guess it depends on what they look like. I mean, certainly we think our Senate plan is wonderful, and he should fully endorse it. I don't know that will happen. I'm sure the House thinks their plan is wonderful and wants the governor to fully endorse it as well. So, something tells me he's going to take a careful look at both of them and decide. Typically it's slightly controversial, and like I said, they usually end up in court no matter what. So I suspect they'll all end up across the river from the State House up at the courts.
We have a few minutes left, and I'd like to just cover a couple new things that I haven't covered there before. There's an issue with the Superior Court in being in Nashua and moving it to Manchester and keeping it completely up in Manchester. Now, I guess it doesn't make too much difference for people in Milford, but we think that the two largest cities should each have a Superior Court. What is your opinion on that?
I haven't looked at it too much. I do know it came up last year, and I felt that an issue that big and that important, it kind of came up at the last minute.
Right.
I think, they had just finished the reconstruction or renovation of the Manchester one, and I guess they're going to be moving a whole bunch of stuff around and, creating the circuit court. So they were moving a whole bunch of stuff around, and someone thought, and I get from a logistical perspective, it probably makes sense if you're going to be moving stuff around, do it all at once, and said, hey, let's do this too. But I think cooler heads prevailed, and they realized that was a lot of change to propose with not a lot of process and input and transparency. And so that's one thing we certainly try for in the Senate at least, and I'm sure in the House as well, is respect the process and don't spring big surprises on people at the last minute. So I think the court people realized that was an issue. So I know they proposed it again. I assume it's a bill in the House. I don't recall seeing it in the Senate. So we'll take a look at it when it comes over again, assuming it comes over, depending on what the wording of it is.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of guessing and what it was saying and what it was going to cost, what it was going to save.
Yes.
And originally, the numbers that tossed around is over $1 million we were going to save by reorganizing. Then it came out, no, it's not going to be that. It's only going to be a couple $100,000.
So it keeps going down.
And then it was, well, it's only going to be about less than $100,000 for the first 2 years, and then it's going to be more. Now, this is probably going to be the main point of contention. Are you really going to save anything? Because it is going to cost people here to go up there. And both courthouses have enough room, so it's not a question of squeezing space out. But there is a question from our side in Nashua that we need to have it here because of the ability for our law enforcement people, the lawyers, and even the parking up there in Manchester isn't the best. But we're going to have I listened to the Chief Justice give a talk to the county commissioners, more on the TV for the communication with the prisoners. But they talked about the move being an efficiency move for their operation. I've asked her to come on, and she will be on in a future meeting.
Oh, good, good.
So we'll be able to get.
I think it's important to get that information out there.
It is.
We need to make these decisions based on facts, and if you don't have and again, that's the whole reason for taking your time to get the facts. So when you vote on it, up or down, yes or no, you at least know what you're voting on.
That's right, and what the result's going to be. And I appreciate what they're doing, because I think what they're doing in reorganizing the court should make it more efficient.
It should. I would agree.
Yeah. Okay, and one other thing I think I had was the private prisons. The state's looking into private prisons. How does the Senate feel about that?
Well, the Senate, I believe it was a Senate bill that at least asked them to do that, which I believe was then incorporated into the budget. I think it's something we have to look at. We have to look at everything the state does and say, okay, is this the best way to do it? There are some that argue that a private prison can house our prisoners for less. I think if you look at the details, you may find comparing apples to oranges. So Vermont does it for much less than we do, but they are only sending out their mid-level security prisoners to an off-site facility in Kentucky, I think. But we still have to have the infrastructure for maximum security. So there's a lot of fixed costs. So unless you pack up everything and send it to another state, in which case you have difficulties with court access and everything else, you need to be sure you're comparing apples to apples. So I'm open to the idea, but it's really going to be a matter of, okay, does an apples to apples comparison save us money or does it not? I can tell you that the facility that we're using in Concord, over 100 years old, and the Goffstown facility for women, both need to be replaced somehow, and that's a given. So now it's a matter of how do we do that. I think proposals are due this month on various options from private companies. So I think it's our responsibility to look at them and again have the facts and vote yes or no on an informed basis and make the decision.
My understanding is there's about 3 companies that are bidding.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. There are 2 real large companies in the country, and then I did meet with a third one that I hadn't heard of before. So I'm going to say there's at least 3 that will be making proposals.
That's what I've been reading in the Manchester paper.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And there's a question, though, where to place it. Always not in my backyard, obviously.
Ward 3, I think. Ward 3. Senator Lambert's in the audience.
No, I don't think so.
Specifically in Senator Lambert.
And they're going to put a bridge across the river through his territory.
He's not coming back. We'll put it right there.
Well, no, there is some land, too, in Goffstown, next to the county facility.
Yes, the county facility has land there. So,
and I don't know if that is an option or not. Whether
I think it's responsible to look at all the options and whatever is the most efficient way to get the job done too. I mean, you can be a cheapskate, and I can be a cheapskate, but if you're going to be a cheapskate, make sure you get the job done too.
Well, and you want to do it to make it less intrusive to the people around it. I think there's a lot of open land there that would do that.
That would do that.
And they do have to do something with the women's prison that's there.
I agree.
And their contract right now with the county is going to be up in June.
Okay.
So they have to, they're going to have to extend it a little bit because they can't just do it overnight. I mean, it'd be a couple of years before the facility would be ready. But that might be an option, too, to be considered.
Yep, I think we should look at all the options.
Yeah. Well, we're running into the end of the half hour, and I was just wondering if there's anything else you'd like to bring up from your side.
I'll just mention it's been a pleasure working with Senator Lambert and Senator Luther representing the Nashua area, they've been great additions to the team.
They have been. We appreciate their help on the Nashua area. The Nashua Republican Club is the sponsor of this show, and we do have the ability to answer questions from our audience if they write into our website at NashuaGOP.org.
Very good.
So if some of our people have questions,
forward me any questions you get.
We'll do.
Very good.
Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Nice
Great to be here.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Welcome, viewers. This is Representative Carl Seidel coming back to talk to you, this time with State Senator Gary Lambert. But before we meet Gary, the next meeting of the Nashua Republican Club is February 9th at 7 p.m. at the Crown Plaza. Kevin Smith will be the candidate for governor. It will be the guest speaker that evening. So if you want to see Kevin Smith, please come on February 9th at the Crown Plaza, or visit our website, NashuaGOP.org. And you can also use the website to look at past shows. There's a way of connecting with the archive file for the People's View past shows. So, Gary, we'll go on. We'll talk to you and your change of heart, I guess you might say. You want to go back and get active.
I do.
Tell us about it.
Thanks, Carl. Thanks for having me back on the show. I enjoyed our first time here. And yes, with deep regret, I am not going to run for re-election. And the driving force behind all that has been set forth in the media, et cetera, as a lawsuit I prevailed on against the Secretary of the Navy regarding my involuntary retirement in October 2009. But to make a long story short, there were 99 of us colonels that were involuntarily retired. Turns out they broke the law. Too detailed to get into it at this point. I sued the Secretary of the Navy. I won. And then the Marine Corps came back and said, listen, why don't you just come back if you want to come back? And I do. And so I'm going to go back to my old job at Camp Lejeune, being the Deputy Staff Judge Advocate down there, and I'm really looking forward to it.
Not bad. Yeah. Well, we hate to lose somebody like you. I mean, taking on the Secretary of the Navy was no easy task.
Actually, I'm trying to think, what was, of course, I was the first Republican to win the district in 94 years. I don't know if it was more difficult doing that or taking on the Secretary of the Navy, but they've both been great wins, and I'm
doing it at the same time. So
That's right.
that's amazing too in
Yeah,
itself.
I did. That's right. They did. I did do it about the same time.
And we really were amazed at the hard work you put in to get elected. You really did a good job, and I hope we can find somebody. I know we can't replace you, but at least get somebody else elected. I don't know. You set a high standard for them.
Well, thank you very much, Carl. But there's always great people out there, great people running. I've heard a few names, rather not mention them now. But I think, you know, like any other task, if, you know, you're a door-to-door guy too. I love door-to-door. Door-to-door and retail politics works in New Hampshire.
Well, that's one way we're starting this thing. We want to get to the people, and that's you can't knock on. Well, you can knock on every door, but they're not always home, as you know. So this is a way we hope to be able to get to the people, explain things that are happening, things that they can't really get the full gist of on the paper, the newspapers, or other ways around there. So we're hoping to make this a very informative media for the people of Nashua, and actually for the state. So tell us what you think we should be doing.
Well, I think you're doing, first of all, you're doing a great job doing this. The next best thing to that face-to-face meeting at the door, or a constituent coming up to the State House, is this type of, you know, atmosphere you've got here, where we can, even though we can't talk to people, well, we can talk to people, we can't look them in the eye because they're not here, but let them know what we're thinking. A lot of times the media and the paper doesn't necessarily explain all the details that we would like to see out there. How many times have we heard, oh, the media turned the message around or didn't report it correctly? Well, this is our opportunity to do it, and that's why I think it's a wonderful thing you're doing here.
No, thank you. Yeah, there was something in today's paper that surprised me. They called one of our Republicans a Democrat.
Well, that's what I mean. Yeah.
But there are different things that we can do, and I hope that people use as a two-way communication. We gave the website, NashuaGOP.org, or if they want to contact me at Seidel, the number 4, state rep at mindspring.com. I can get the questions directly, or the other co-host, Representative Pete Silver, has a website too.
Right. No, I think it's a great idea, and it's just this is the way New Hampshire politics works, and the way it should work. And I was in the State House today, and people can just walk into my office, and if I'm there, I mean, I'm going to talk to them.
Yeah.
I mean, where do you get to do that? Really?
Well, you get an office.
Actually, I got an office. They'll spot you in the hall and they can hit you up.
Yeah, but, they'll do that. That's true. All I get, though, is a draw in the conference room. But anyway, what do you see? You're going to go out with a bang? You got some big bills or anything that you're going to
Well, I'm going to try to take care of constituents. I've got all the bills that I've prime sponsored on, except maybe just a few because the constituents came to me. And, you know, I'm not looking to go out with a bang. I am, as all of us are, trying to do the right thing for our constituents and our voters. I've got a few things on tap. One of the main things, I'm trying to get a mid-level dental care provider slot out there that is kind of in between the hygienists that we have now and the dentists that are out there. They can't take care of a lot of that need, I think, that exists, especially up in the North Country.
Something like a physician's assistant type?
Exactly. It's not going to be called that, or maybe called something like that. But look where we've come on that. And so I'm going to try to do that. I don't know if I mentioned it before. I'm going to try to make some money for the state and for charities by try to get a Patriots plate, the New England Patriots plate. Because for the way it's worked in other states is they normally charge $40 for the plate. State gets 20, charities get the other 20, and everybody comes out ahead. So we'll see where that goes, and anything like that. Today, you know, I mean, just yesterday I came in with 4 late bills because, as you know, our time to file bills has passed. Constituents have approached me on 4 different issues, so I came and I got 4 new bills. So constantly trying to do, you know, what the constituents
There's a
want.
lot of stuff up there, I know. I mean, I guess now that I see what the numbers on the final bills that the House has to consider, we're up into the 1800s. So
I don't know how you guys do it. I know you got more committees and more people,
We have more people, that's about it. But there's still a lot of bills that are not well thought out. That's one of the problems. We don't have, well, you know how many staff we have. I mean, there's, what, 16 lawyers that handle both of us?
I know it. I don't know how they do it. They do a crack bang up job, and by the way, they do not shut down for lunch.
Yeah.
As you know, you can go in there anytime. and they're open for business.
Yeah, they are trying to be very, very helpful. Right. I mean, I've worked with a number of them, not all of them yet, but they are very helpful. And they know where to go. That's one thing.
That's right.
I mean, they know the agencies a lot better than we do. I mean, just as a freshman, you know, it's a lot of people up there. The government is quite large.
Right.
Even though we're a relatively small state, we have a lot of activity up there.
Right.
Are you involved with anything that helped the business community that you?
I would say that half the bills, in fact, I left my bills and all the bills that I'm co-sponsoring or sponsoring on in my briefcase, but I was looking at that just to get ready kind of for this discussion here today, and we've got a lot of pro-business bills that deal with regulations, undue regulations, taxes, business tax credits, and you know, I think the thing I'm most proudest about, Colin, you can take credit for this too, since we're all up there at the same time, but the unemployment rates just came out, I think it was yesterday or the day before, 4.9, lowest they've been since December 2008, and as you know, Senator Bragdon said before me, we take credit for some of that because of the climate that we've created in New Hampshire. So,
I mean, we're hearing about companies that are already starting to move in here because they see the right kind of situation where you're not going to have to worry about getting hit once you start to grow or, you know, have things change on you.
That's right. And so, you know, if only the rest of the country did what we did, live within our means on a budget, unemployment is on its way down. I think we're a test case. We're the light on the hill for the rest of the country to look at as to how to run affairs.
Well, I think you're right. I just hope we can get the word out, and hopefully we'll be able to help with this People's View. Right. We'll see that. Well, Gary, I'd like to wish you well.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate it.
It's not a new career, but it's...
No, it's not. Actually, it's an old one. In fact, it's 33 years now.
Well,
and
really.
I got to tell you, I'm really going to miss working with people like you. I'm really going to miss the Senate.
It is a friendly legislature.
It really is. In fact, if you read Landrigan's article on it, you know, the biggest surprise I had is how well people get along up there. And people have this vision of politicians arguing all the time, but...
Well, that's what surprises me too. But again, that's somebody wants to cultivate this headbutting up there, and it's not that headbutting. I mean, there's some times when you do get trying to keep the organization going right, but you know, I don't see anybody taking a stick and hitting anybody over the head with it or anything like that.
I can say this with an honest look you right in the eye. I've never been pressured to vote any way on any given bill. Leadership has been fantastic, and it's just been a real pleasurable experience. Yeah,
on our side too, they do explain what they want to, what their objective is, and you either believe that or you don't believe that. But you know, I think sometimes they know a little bit more than people who are only up there for the first year, as far as what will get through.
That's
right. What will get through, not only from the House to the Senate, I guess from the Senate to the House.
That's right. And that's part of it too. I mean, because you know, time is limited. There's no need to spin your wheels if it's not going to happen.
Right, right. So anyway, Gary, congratulations.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate it. Thank you.
And, really nice working with you.
All right. Thanks so much. I appreciate it.
Okay. Welcome back. This is Representative Carl Seidel for the People's View. And before we meet our next guest, I just wanted to remind you of the National Republican Committee meeting. That's on February 9th, 7 p.m. at the Crown Plaza. Kevin Smith, the candidate for governor of this fine state, will be the guest speaker. And visit our website at nashuagop.org. And now I'd like you to meet Representative John Hikel. John, how are you today?
Good, Carl. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Yes.
What are you doing up there in the Concord that you can tell us about?
Well, it's been a great experience. Actually, Carl, I lived in Nashua for about 25 years. And in early 2003 or so, I decided to sell everything. I changed my plan, and I moved to Goffstown. I got minimally involved with town politics, and then in 2008, I decided to run for the House of Representatives, and I won. And from there, it's been a great experience, probably one of the best I've had.
Going to run again?
I'm going to run again, yes.
Good.
Yeah, I really like it. I like representing the the people of Goffstown and Ware. And the redistricting now has changed a few things for Goffstown, but we have our own district. I've been I'm obviously on the Republican ticket and have consistently voted in the 96 to 99 percentile of the Republican platform on most of my votes. So when a Republican issue comes up in the House, I'm probably supporting it.
And you're on the Transportation Committee?
Vice Chair of Transportation,
Very
yes.
good, very good.
We deal with Department of Safety.
That's a little unusual for a freshman.
It is. Well, I'm a sophomore now.
A sophomore,
this is my second, right?
That's right.
So, but we deal with speed limits, and Department of Safety is really who comes in and has issues, and so we discuss safety issues in our committee.
Well, I know from our communications that you have a varied interest, a lot of constituents that you respond to, and different things that you think should be should happen, should be legislated. Can you tell us what your big issue is that's coming up?
Well, two issues. One, we just had a hearing, for instance, and that was swipe fees for credit cards. And we had I did the testimony at the Commerce Committee this past Tuesday, and we were supported by retailers throughout the state, grocers throughout the state, auto dealers. Every merchant and every business that uses a credit card machine is basically supporting this bill, and this would allow them to pay less fees when it comes to looking at their credit card bill. Actually, that one came from a friend of mine who owned a gas station here in Nashua, and he was paying, he's paying just under $9,000 a month in credit card fees. And I understand that there's a cost to do business, and banks have to make money, and everybody needs to make money if they're doing this. But at those fees, I figured there was something in there that they may be overcharging with. And as I started picking apart those credit card statements, including mine, because I own an auto repair shop, I did in Nashua for 13 years, and now I've been in Goffstown for 10 years with Uptown Auto. And so I get to swipe those cards, and I look at the back of my credit card statement, and I say, geez, I'm paying 50% more than I should be, or more than I contracted with of these hidden fees. And so we're going to try to do something about that.
So it's like the airline industry. They get a fee for this and a fee for that and a fee for something else.
And banks are very good at that, because banks don't have to convert car parts into money. They just have money, and they just need to convert money into money, and they're very good at doing that and making that grow. But one of the other bills that I came here specifically to talk to you about is another very business-friendly bill for the state of New Hampshire. It's also a bill that's very friendly to consumers, and that is to allow grocery stores to sell liquor. Grocery stores that presently sell beer and wine. I thought it would be a good idea, and I was approached by some grocers, some large grocers that would like to add that line to their products on the shelf. And I saw no problem with selling a legal product that people want to buy and attracting more customers into these stores throughout the state. So I sponsored that bill, and I'm gaining an awful lot of support. I know the day that I put it on the web, on the House website, to see if I could get some co-sponsors, I had my 10 co-sponsors within about 20 minutes. So it's one of those things where I've had very little opposition and a lot of support.
Okay. No opposition?
Well, the Liquor Commission.
Oh, okay. What's happened with the Liquor Commission?
Well, they will say, they're obviously protecting. This is called a controlled state when it comes to liquor. And we have liquor stores. We have, I think it's 72 throughout the state. And they want to protect it. And I don't blame them in the reasoning for it. They are about a $500 million agency, probably the third biggest agency that we have in the state. So we do need to protect that, from going anywhere. And I believe they return approximately $120 million a year to the state in profit. Right. So I'm very sensitive to that, and I certainly want to guard that. But the idea that that this, and I hate to use the word monopoly, but I guess it kind of is, and it's a it's a monopoly, and which I don't favor, and I don't favor, especially by a government selling any type of product that a private company can do. But my plan is different than maybe the past ones. I don't want to break up the commission. I don't want to end the liquor stores. I just want our favorite grocery stores and convenience stores to be able to sell this product. And I think that, I think that this will work in a way where we won't need to increase enforcement because the enforcement already patrols and is able to enforce the beer and wine sales throughout the state. So just adding another product doesn't increase the load, let's say. But they did add that on the fiscal note of the bill.
They did.
That they're going to need another $1 million a year, and they're going to have to hire an additional enforcement
But they didn't explain that?
Well, I don't agree with that because, and I don't, you know, and now being a legislator, understanding how the rules go, I find out that departments that are going to be affected by a particular piece of legislation, they get to write the fiscal note if there's money attached to it. So, and I'd like to know how that came about and where that came from, and is that just an accepted practice, or is that actually through legislation that allows them to do that? And if they can do it, then why can't the people who are going to be affected in the other way, why can't they also include a fiscal note to that bill when it goes to Ways and Means, and also give Ways and Means a different perspective of an affected group?
What happens? Will the liquor still be wholesaled essentially, like the state liquor authority does to hotels, and they'll treat them the same way as the stores that are going to handle it?
Absolutely. The state will still maintain the warehouse, and that's the key.
Right.
That the state will become a larger wholesaler, and they will also be selling their product through the liquor stores. But again, the product is not owned by the state; it's owned by the distributors, and it really is never owned by the state. It's just passed through the cash register. The state takes its money out of the liquor store. So instead of paying, let's just take for example, instead of paying $6 for a bottle and selling it for 10, when it goes through the liquor store, they're going to be buying it for 6, but they may be selling it wholesale for 8. Except they're going to be selling an awful lot of them because I'm aware of 1,200 grocers throughout the state that are looking to be able to sell this product, and reason tells me that if you have another 1,200 outlets that sell a product, reason tells me that you're going to sell an awful lot more of that product.
Is the fiscal note take that into account, that there'll be an increase in the overall income?
No, not that I read. I read that because the fiscal note has been written by the Liquor Commission, so their job is to make it.
So it's going to cost them X number of dollars for extra people, is what you're saying.
Yes.
And they don't make any estimate of what it's going to do to either their liquor stores, to the liquor stores that are distributed, and the income that they'll get from these food stores.
Correct, because their fiscal, I guess the job of a fiscal note from a side that doesn't agree with this to happen is to make it appear to be as bad as possible for the entire program. But I believe, and I know everyone that I talk to, I have had no opposition. I tell this to people. They come in my auto repair shop. I talk about this. I talk about this to grocers. I talk about this to just people on the street. I meet a lot of folks wherever I go. The legislators. I bring this up a lot, and nobody thinks it's a bad idea. Everyone says, yeah, you know, I passed 10 grocery stores in the 10 miles I have to go drive to find my liquor store. And, you know, and when you're in a grocery store, a lot of things that you buy
you buy all the food that goes with that, you know
it's
something
impulse.
like that for a party.
Right, so the truckers like it. They know that if more people go in grocery stores, even if you go in to buy a bottle of liquor, you may buy something else. And the more groceries that these stores sell, the more things, the more deliveries the trucks will make. I'm also thinking about, in my fiscal note, if I was to write one, which I would like to include one in there, is that as I owned a nightclub before also, and I had a full liquor license, an on-premise liquor license, and I paid $1,200 a year for that on-premise liquor license to sell beer, wine, and spirits of any proof. So if a grocery store, let's say we start a new license or a license that I believe they already have, it's called an off-premise license, but we charged similar pricing, let's say $1,200, and we added 1,000 new locations throughout the state, that's $1.2 million in licensing fees that will be renewed every year, right? So that in itself, if the fiscal note is correct and they need more enforcement, that could actually take care of the enforcement. I'm looking at the stores that would want to buy into this program and be sellers of liquor. I'm estimating about a $10 million upfront purchase to for all these places to stock their shelves, and they're not going to be. This isn't going to be owned by the warehouses. This isn't going to be owned by the distributors.
Cash will be.
Those stores are going to be buying it, and they're going to be paying for it and putting it on their shelf. So I'm estimating about $10 million a year there. I'm also estimating about $5 million a month in sales, in revenue sales for the. So I think it's a win-win. It's a win-win for the Liquor Commission. It's a win-win for the state in the general fund. It's a win-win for customers, consumers.
Better get somebody on the Ways and Means to be with you too.
Well, of course. I mean, and all this is,
that's the way it goes up there. I mean, you're going to have to
That's
show
called
that
politics.
it's all. Well, it's not only politics. It's the fact that you're going to have to show that the income is positive.
Exactly. And Representative Stepanek, I've explained to him my program. He's the chair of the Ways and Means,
Right.
And so I've explained to him, and I'm ready to show him with hard numbers. Of course, I can't. You can't give absolute numbers because we've never done it before. But I can give real good estimates based on what other states do with similar programs.
Have you asked the food stores that you think are going to take advantage of this to make an estimate, or to actually do maybe even a survey? Have somebody, finance a survey to see how much increased income that the stores are anticipating if this goes through.
I've got surveys from other states, like Maine, for instance. They see, Maine made a horrible mistake, and we're not going to make that mistake. They actually leased out or sold, or I think they leased out their warehouse business. So, and for $10 million or something ridiculously low for a 10-year lease, it was just the wrong thing to do. They lost tens of millions of dollars by giving this product. They literally gave it away.
That's the wrong place to save, I agree with you.
Oh, big time. So, but the stores are actually happy to have it. And I know all the little grocery stores have.
So you can show in Maine that they increased the income just from that.
I can show in Maine that they made a huge mistake by letting the warehouse go, which we're not going to. I can also show that in Maine, when you walk into Sam's Club in Augusta, and you walk and they've got, what we have in our wine aisle, for instance, they've got
larger ones,
huge liquor aisle in the middle of Sam's Club in Augusta, Maine, and they like it, and so does the Hannafords and the Stop and Shops and the other grocery stores and the convenience stores. This is a great business. Well,
we're almost out of time. Is there anything else you'd like to add about what you're doing up there, or any other legislation?
Well, redistricting was a big deal. We had a great time this past Wednesday. We got an awful lot done. Thank goodness we have a tremendous leader in Speaker Bill O'Brien, who's become not only a friend, but a very trusted and just as good as they can get, I think, as being a speaker.
Gee, that's a little different than the newspapers.
Isn't that well?
Well, do you know what happens there?
Because we really know him, and the newspapers
right.
don't.
Deal with him
we're not
day.
selling anything. This guy is got all my respect, and I truly enjoy the man a lot.
I enjoy working with him too.
Right.
Well, thank you very much for being here tonight.
My pleasure.
And I just want to remind our audience again that the Nashua Republican meeting is February 9th, 7 p.m. at the Crown Plaza. And Kevin Smith will be the speaker. He's running for governor. And look at our website, nationalgop.org, and write us if you have any questions or you like anybody you'd like to see as a guest on People's View. Thank you for tuning in to